Flawless. Chapter 2. A piercing shrill. Someone was screaming. Charlotte scrunched her eyes tighter and pulled the duvet over her head. Whichever kid had decided to wake her by shrieking and wailing was going to be in serious trouble. Maybe she could muffle the sound by wrapping the heavy material against her ears. It didn't get any quieter. It was getting louder, and it wasn't coming from the house. It was coming from inside her head. Charlotte's eyes snapped open. The screaming stopped instantly, replaced by the younger kids in the home plodding as subtly as elephants down the stairs and whispering too loudly. Her chest was tight. Why was she holding her breath? She gasped, the breath escaping again in sharp bursts. It was damp outside, and a layer of condensation clung to her window. What was that outside? A face. You were supposed to scream if you saw some strange face spying on you, especially at a second-floor window, right? Except she wasn't afraid. At least, not of the face. Springing from the bed, she cursed. Should have tied it up last night like you were supposed to. Hairdryer plug, plus foot, equals pain. Charlotte limped over to the window and pulled it up too fast, trapping the curtain in the runner. For God's sake! Cursing, she yanked it free and tried again. Of course, the window was only designed to open a fraction. She crouched, peering through the gap. The garden was clear below. No face anywhere. Wait! Between the bushes at the back, a lone female figure staring up at her. Long silvery hair with a crown of bluebells and eyes the colour of conkers. She was beautiful. Her dress floated like a cobweb caught in a gentle breeze, lifting around her even though nothing else in the garden swayed. The sunlight highlighted a glistening tear on her cheek. You didn't forget someone like her. The Fae, Charlotte whispered. The memory of this lady and her mother dancing together as clear as the condensation on the window. The safety stops pushed back against her as she tried to lift the window more. Damn it, it's not like I'm going to jump! Or was she? The thought had crossed her mind. Like a fishing line in her chest, the Fae lady tugged, and at that moment Charlotte would do anything to get to her. Wheeling round, she staggered over to the door and shoved her feet inside a pair of trainers. Her sore foot protested, but she didn't care. She had to get into the garden. Stupid thing! Charlotte spat, throwing her weight against the always sticky garden door. It gave and Charlotte tumbled out onto the patio, only just managing to stay upright. The lawn was wet, and her trainer-covered feet were soaked by the time she got to the bushes. The lady had gone. If she'd even been real in the first place. Had therapy finally led to full-on hallucinations? It was a massive coincidence. Maybe Dr. Portland had been right, and it had all been Mum's imagination. Perhaps Charlotte had just bought into it because she was so small. That was it. She was officially going crazy. What am I doing? Charlotte whispered, sinking into a crouch and pushing her palms into her moistening eye sockets. Charlotte? Fantastic. A carer. That was all she needed. Ben was in his early 30s, with ginger hair pulled back into a bun and a bushy beard. He liked to think he was down with the kids, but his attempts at the lingo were cringeworthy. Of all the carers to find her having a breakdown, he was probably the least likely to report her to a psychiatric ward. Maybe. You okay? What are you doing out here? Good question. I'm out here because I saw a Fae folk woman who I think knew my mother after I woke up hearing screaming that I don't think anyone else could hear. No. Not the answer to go with if she wanted to avoid being sent straight to Dr. Portland. I lost something out here last night. Lying was getting far too easy. Oh, what is it? Maybe I can help you look for it. Trust Ben to be oh so helpful. It's okay, it doesn't matter, it's not here. I must have left it somewhere else. Ben didn't look convinced, but he shrugged and nodded towards the house. You better get ready for school then. You don't want to be late, and you don't want to miss a special breakfast of pancakes cooked by yours truly. It's going to be poggers. Ouch, Ben, seriously? Definitely don't want to miss that. Great, come on in. Maybe leave your trainers on the radiator. They look a bit soggy. Sure. Pancakes for breakfast. That's exactly what she should be doing. Maybe it would bring her head back to reality. Would you look at that? Ben said, pointing down at the floor between the bushes. I've never seen one of those in the garden before. They usually grow in woodlands. A small purple-blue flower sat nestled neatly between the bushes, the flower heads hanging down like little bells. A bluebell. What was going on? Ben flung his arm across her shoulders and steered her into the house before Charlotte had a chance to take a closer look. All through breakfast, getting changed and her first bus ride to school, she couldn't stop thinking about the Fey Lady. Memories replayed over and over. The Fey Lady in the garden, the day in the woods with Mum, and the echo of a scream. Why had she seen this lady? She almost missed her stop to change for the second bus. Concentrate, Charlotte. Easier said than done. A teddy fell out of the pushchair in front as she boarded the number 43. Its soft fur tickled between her fingers as she handed it to the mother. She might have smiled, but Charlotte had too much to think about to notice. The bus was packed at this time of day, and she had to settle for a fold-down seat behind the driver. Opposite her sat a pair of legs in tweed trousers and tattered brown leather shoes. The rest of the man was obscured by the local paper he was reading. Charlotte idly skimmed the pages as he folded it in half, revealing a big story. The Dawn of a New Age. The title wasn't that intriguing, but there was a photograph of a man wearing an ID badge with a symbol she hadn't seen in years. It was from the place her dad had worked. Development of a new state-of-the-art complex goes underway today. Refinex, a local science laboratory and technology development site, have revealed their plans to create a modern utopia. The new site will boast an array of offices and accommodation, all with the latest in cutting-edge technology. The site aims to be 90% renewable, taking most of running needs from green forms of energy. A massive 9,000 new jobs will be created on completion, and Refinex assures us that all of those working on site, even those not directly employed by Refinex, will be guaranteed excellent wages and additional benefits. Dr. Fields, head of the development, told us, "This is just the start. This fantastic site will enable interactive living for its residents and offices that can be so much more than efficient. The plan is to make the site 100% renewable with zero waste in the future." If the first site is successful, Refinex revealed they hope to expand their amenities into the city, improving housing and offering a better way of life for all residents. They have also revealed their intention to build their own state-of-the-art hospital and schools to ensure the best education and care is given to all. The development has met with some resistance, however, from locals, deploring the required destruction of a section of woodland up on Keraton Top. Keraton Top? The Fey Wood? Mum's Wood. Dad's old company was building on the woodland. The bus jerked to a halt and the man opposite stood up, folded the paper under his arm and got off. Great. Now she couldn't read the rest of the story. If her phone hadn't been some ancient hand-me-down rubbish given to her by the home, she'd have looked it up. But she was going to have to wait until she could use the school computer. This had to be the slowest bus journey ever. Her fingers drummed on her bag. Her body twitched and it was impossible to sit still. Some of the other passengers were glaring, but she couldn't help it. Something was going on. Something to do with Dad, and maybe Mum too. Charlotte ran most of the way from the bus stop to the school gates, trying to ignore the sweat dripping down her back and underarms. This was worse than a PE lesson. At least they didn't make you run with a heavy school bag full of books. Almost there. Her shoulder jarred as she crashed into the double doors and her bag slipped, ejecting the contents all over the schoolyard. Apparently, only the left one had been unlocked this morning. Charlotte cursed as she struggled to catch her breath. Why had she thought she needed to run to school? A cacophony of sniggers filled the air. She'd been in such a hurry she hadn't noticed the other students littered about the yard. One laugh rose above the rest. Of course, Caroline Devlin had to be there. Charlotte dropped to the floor, desperately collecting her books. Now would be a good time for the ground to swallow her up. Did anyone get that on video? It had to be worth 200 quid on You've Been Framed. Even before you rugby tackled the door, the running was hilarious. Caroline had that tone where she was playing to an audience. The giggles meant it was working. There were a few students from different years dotted around, but at the front was Caroline with 2 of her girlfriends and a boy. Her arms were still draped around his neck in prime make-out position. Charlotte grimaced. His hands were still on Caroline's arse. It had to be too early in the day for public displays of snogging and feeling each other up. Charlotte didn't even know his name. He was from the year below and could have stepped straight out of some 90s boy band. But then again, girls like Caroline always had attractive boyfriends. That was running? He asked, a smirk poisoning his pretty face. It was for Tomato. By the way, you really should think about getting some deodorant. Those sweat patches really aren't attractive. Another laugh from the cronies. It wasn't the first time she'd been called Tomato. It was Caroline's nickname for her in PE class because she always ended up red as a tomato. Why were you in such a hurry? Did the school announce a bake sale? Caroline laughed, and so did her posse. You better hurry up. You don't want them to run out of cakes before you get there, fatty. Don't say anything. Just breathe. If you speak, it will only make it worse. Not that that mattered. Her throat was dry, and her tongue felt fuzzy like it had forgotten how to form words. Charlotte ducked her head and stuffed the last few papers back into her bag. Maybe they don't feed kids well enough in care, suggested one of Caroline's friends. You don't look like that, eating nothing, Caroline replied. Not everyone could be as hot as you, babe, the boyfriend said, pulling Caroline in close to him and snogging her, his hands roaming up and down her back and bum. It was like watching lions ravaging a carcass. Words popped out of Charlotte's mouth before she could stop herself. At least they don't make us eat each other's faces. There can't be many boys you haven't tasted. The boyfriend pulled away. Caroline's lips pursed and her eyes bored into Charlotte's. Oh God, where had that come from? Keep your mouth shut and pretend it doesn't bother you. That's all you had to do. But you're still a virgin, right? The boyfriend whispered. It was going to happen again. Not words, but this time a laugh burst out of Charlotte's mouth. Caroline rounded on her. Are you calling me a slut, bitch? Walk away. Take a breath and just walk away. Except she couldn't. It was like she'd woken up that morning possessed. Since the moment Charlotte had heard that screaming, a sense of something more important than normal life had taken over. She wasn't scared anymore, and for the first time ever, Caroline was a hindrance, not a threat. You called me fat, Charlotte answered calmly. I said what I see, Caroline retorted. So did I. Caroline's cheeks reddened. Charlotte turned to enter the school, swinging her bag over her shoulder, but Caroline blocked her way. At least I'm not ugly, Caroline spat. Sweat patches all over because you're too overweight to run. Skin all blotchy and red, spots everywhere. A massive nose, piggy eyes, and your hair is so greasy I can see my reflection in it. I mean, haven't you heard of shampoo? Charlotte's shoulders sagged and her breath caught. Why couldn't she speak? She had to keep it together. If she crumbled now, Caroline would win again. You have no friends. I mean, what does that say? No boy is ever going to want to go out with someone like you. Your own parents didn't even want you. Her insides were knotting. My parents died. You're such a liar. She thinks everyone will feel sorry for her if she says that, instead of seeing her for the disgusting creature she is. Charlotte's mouth had gone dry. Moisture congregated behind her eyes, threatening to spill out. I'm not a liar, Charlotte stammered. Tremors racked her body and her head drooped as she fought to keep her eyes on Caroline. She wanted to run away. She'd be in trouble for not going to school, but she couldn't face it, not now. Turning away from Caroline, Charlotte marched back out of the school gates. She swallowed again and again, forcing back the sobs that fought to escape. At the end of the road, she crouched against a garden wall and buried her face in her hands. Caroline had won again.